How's everybody doing? Just adjusting everything there so you can clearly see what's going on. Maybe bring you guys just a little further forwards, a little further down. Bear with me. I want to make sure you can still see me and the back at the same time. So welcome to today's live. What am I doing? I am doing the very last seam actually for the main part of the bag. So we have the gussets here, we have the welts of the gussets, and now there's an edge binding going on here, which is just a strip of leather like this, which goes on over the outside all the way around, perforated on one side with pricking iron, so I can see what I'm doing on this side going in with it all. And yeah, so this will be the last part of the main bag, as you can see here. We still need to put in, shoulder strap, handles, a few other bits and pieces as well. But of course, if you guys are interested in asking some questions, feel free during the live to join in. Hope you guys are enjoying your day. So I'm stitching blind on the rear side with my awl, but on the right hand side, this side here, I can see where this needs to go. I was talking actually in a previous live telling people that if you are doing this, and I've mentioned it on the video course for this, that if you want a slightly easier time stitching, you can prick mark both sides and then just use an awl, go through all the layers, and you just kind of aim for the hole on the offside. So that's an easy way of doing it. Riskier. Hi Philip, long time no see. Yeah, I'm on here quite a lot lately, so you'll see quite a bit of me with this bag build. I like to go live when there's a good amount of stitching to do, because I can kind of do it whilst talking to people. And of course this bag takes a lot of stitching as well. But I hope you're doing well. Now, I will say, guys, if you do say something or ask a question and I don't reply, this has happened on the last 2 lives on YouTube. So I'm kind of doing this live on here instead of Instagram just to kind of test it out again, because what's been happening is people are asking questions or talking and saying things, and it doesn't come up on the chat. I'll go, 10 minutes in, and there's a conversation going, and then all of a sudden no one says anything for the rest of the live, and I'm thinking, oh, what's going on here? And it turns out for some reason there's some kind of glitch, and it's happened twice. So if you do say something and I don't reply to you, I'm not being rude. It's YouTube having a few bug issues, I think. Oops, got that caught there on the D-ring. Where's my needle? There it is. Yeah, so coming to the end of this. Now, on the last couple of lives that I've done, many over on Instagram, people have said to me, can we see a closer look of what you're doing and the stitching and that kind of thing? It's kind of difficult to see on a live because it's not in like super HD, and it's not the best place to learn or see how the stitching process goes. So if you guys are interested in learning how to do that, I do have a free video on my website. All you have to do is put your email address in the pop-up and I send you a video on how I do it, which is much better because you get to see up close what I'm doing from different angles. So that's available right now on leathercraftmasterclass.com. And for those of you who are brand new, who don't know this channel, I teach leathercraft online through pre-recorded courses to learn how to make bags, cases, wallets, watch straps, from small leather goods to quite large luggage. That's what we do here. How do I know whether to stick the awl through? On this side here, it could be difficult to see, but this has been perforated with a pricking iron on this side. On the opposite side, on the inside stitches, I don't see. I just maintain the same angle with my awl as I go through, so it's just making sure you stay focused, really. And I'm also looking at the rear side, so if my awl does come through a bit of an odd angle, I can see there's a bit of a bulge that happens right before the blade pokes through. And as long as I catch it in time and I'm not going too fast, I can actually see where it's going to poke through, so I can stop and adjust if necessary. But yeah, so it's only prick marked on one side. But as I mentioned before, you can prick mark on both sides if you wish. However, saying that, you will need a reverse pricking iron or a regular pricking iron, but you perforate the opposite side on the flesh side. So when it comes through, you know, they'll match up essentially. You want the angles to look like that as it goes up, so that when it folds in, they match each other. So yeah, there are a few tricks you can do if you don't have a reverse pricking iron. Also called a reverse pricking iron or a portmanteau pricking iron. Those are other names for it. Yeah, looking forward to seeing this one complete. I dare say I love the de Havilland travel bag. I think it's a great design. Of course I do. I designed it. But I love this one. I love the combination of the Harris tweed fabric in that kind of light moss green with the dark brown, the dark Havana bridle leather that I'm using here. It's a nice combination. And it makes it just a little bit lighter as well. Although we still have leather on the inside, it's not exactly as light as a shopping bag. It is noticeably lighter than a full leather bag. Chrome tan does help with that to a certain extent. One downside is it does tend to get caught up on all the hardware that I've introduced here. I could actually just wrap it in something like that, but I've been okay so far. But today I seem to be catching it constantly, which is a bit annoying, but just got to keep an eye on it, really. Teaching leathercraft and not being rude. Have you had some rude encounters then, I take it? How many prototypes do you usually make before making a course? That depends entirely on the design. Sometimes I will make, a couple different prototypes if I'm not thinking the design is exactly how I want it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll prototype certain parts. If I'm, confident and experienced on the general design of it, then I'll prototype parts that I want to include in the course to see how it's going to fit and get measurements and things like that. Something like this, I haven't needed to prototype as much. I've made a foam prototype out of it, but it's, I wouldn't say it was basic, but it's quite a simple design. The bag itself, the panels, the base, is all one rectangle, and it's measured to the circumference of the outside of the gusset with the welt included. So it's made to that. So I haven't had to really prototype it with, like cheap leather or salpa or something like that to get the same thing. But there are parts of this that I did prototype with the leather and fabric being used. But yeah, it completely depends on the design. Generally, the more complex the design, the more energy I'll focus into creating a prototype. But much depends on whether or not I've made it before as well. Some of these designs are fairly familiar to me. For example, on this gusset, if you want to create the exterior of the bag to match the circumference, you can't just take like a tailor's tape and measure it around and take that measurement. You have to take a strip of the leather that you're going to use and the fabric that you're going to use and the bag base, and even if it's just a long strip, and then bringing it around the bag so it's the same thicknesses, the same density, same everything, and very carefully undoing that and then measuring it, and then I have the exterior dimensions sorted, and then we can design the pattern and work from there. But this is a fairly forgiving design. If you do get it a little bit wrong, it still works just as well. And that's something that I factor into these designs is it very critical? If it's an overly critical design where if you get one measurement half a millimeter off, the zip doesn't close and stuff like that, I'm not really interested in teaching it. I can make those kind of things, but it's not something you can teach to people who are going to spend good money on leather and fabrics and reinforcement and hardware only for them to get it wrong. So far in the 6 or 7 years, 7 years that I've been doing this, no one has ever said that they've completely ruined a project because they got the measurements wrong. It may have happened, I just haven't. No one's mentioned anything to me, and people do mention a lot of stuff to me, so it's the designs seem to be working very well. They have to be forgiving. But not sacrificing the design, the looks, or functionality. I don't like things to be overly simple, and this isn't overly simple. But it's adjustable as well, because instead of using fabric, you can also use just leather on the outside. So if you're like, I don't really want to use Harris tweed or wool, I want to use cowhide or calf leather or something like that, and it absolutely works as long as you keep the thicknesses the same. Nothing changes. It would just be all leather. Might be a tad heavier, but not by much. Grant says the edges on the gusset really popping out now that everything that's attached looks very nice. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's kind of now framed. if you know what I mean. It ties in nicely with the straps for the handles, and before it looked okay, but now I've finished the edges up and you've got a little bit leather on the outside. Yeah, I agree, it looks a lot better. I've only seen it in my sketches, so it's been a concept of the mind up until now. But yeah, this has worked out very well. I'm very pleased with this one. I'm often happy with how things turn out, but this one especially, it's I really do like the look of it. It's a bit of me. So going around the radius now. So I don't have stitches marked on the inside, so we don't have to lose a stitch or anything like that, or use a smaller pricking iron on the internal radius. I'm just bringing these stitches closer together on the inside. So while the stitching in general is going to be 3.85 millimeter, that's the stitch spacing that I'm using. It'll be a little bit tighter in the corners. What it is, I don't know. Tobias says, I think prototyping is interesting because I've never made something from anybody else's patterns and only designed my own and tried to get the first one decent enough to use. Yeah, I mean, it's a very important process, especially if it's a new or radical design or something that you just haven't done before. Prototyping really, it teaches you a lot. I mean, the first time you actually make the bag in general, it will still be kind of classified, even though you've used premium leather and you've taken your time with it and it turned out great. It's still technically a prototype. You know, if this was a boutique brand or a luxury brand, they would be now giving this design, this bag, this combination out to people to trial it, to then get feedback. You know, it's actually a very long process. If you're a high-end company, you don't just come out with the design and the pattern makers get together and with the leather workers in it, they just produce. There's a lot of feedback involved, and they may then make alterations to it, make another one, send that out for people to use, get their feedback over several weeks of use or even months in some cases, and then make a second one, and then finally it eventually goes to market once they've got enough feedback from people that put it through real world use. So you know, even companies that are worth millions or even billions are still making multiple prototypes, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, to get it right. So it's quite interesting. I'd love to be a fly on the wall on some of these meetings. How do I measure the gusset to match? A lot of the time I will do it the other way around. So I create a gusset. I find it's a little bit easier. It much depends on the design. I know that's like a stuck record that I say, but this one, I created the gussets exactly how I wanted them. And I roughly have an idea of what the bag is going to look like in the overall measurements. But I still, once the gussets were made on a prototype, I then used the leather and the fabric and the bag base, just like a 1-inch thin strip of what you're seeing here. Do I have it? I think I may have thrown it away. I just had a big tidy up today. No, that would have been perfect. I just dumped it in the skip outside. Yeah, so I take the thicknesses and the materials that I'm using, wrap it round, and it's too long. And then I just find the center, cut it in this case, and then I know how much of a gap do I need for the slider to go up and down without binding on either side in use. So I leave a very small gap either side of the slider, and then very carefully tease it apart without stretching anything, and then lay it flat. And I take that measurement, and then I can start using that. Because it's quite a simple design. It is just a rectangle of leather, albeit there's multiple layers. going round the gussets. So every kind of bag requires a different approach to matching gussets and the bag body. And that's how I did this one, but that's not how I would do the de Havilland travel bag. That's not how I would do what's the name of the laptop that I created? I can't remember. Not laptop case. They all vary very slightly. Some I just have to be a bit more creative and start using foam cutouts and then kind of just winging it, and then it doesn't work, and then I cut a little bit more off here and fit it and it works, then transfer those measurements over onto actual leather to see what it's like on the final leather that I'm going to be using. That might be very slightly off, trim that up, and then once I've created a prototype, take it apart, take the measurements, and then if I'm creating a pattern download, digitize it on Adobe Illustrator. So different designs, different bags require different approaches. So unfortunately, there is actually no answer to how do you match a gusset to a bag body. There is an endless number of designs and an almost endless number of ways that you can do that. But I tend to do mine practically in a more of kind of a creative manner and then digitize. And some people prefer to try and figure it all out in theory first and then start cutting into leather from there. That's never worked for me as well. I've never been able to outmath leather. It's a natural product. It doesn't like to conform, unfortunately. You know, some people take a gusset pattern and then butt it up to a piece of card and then, you know, perfectly move it around and then mark the measurements where it overlaps and all that kind of thing. That can work. That can give you a good ballpark measurement, but you know, even stitching something too tightly makes something shrink, and it may not shrink at the same rate as the piece that you're stitching it to, for different reasons, different thicknesses, different materials. So yeah, prototyping. You need to get it wrong enough times and then figure out why it's wrong. And then after years and years and years of experience in doing it, you begin to get a bit of a knack for it. When is Scientology going to be a race? I want to be anti-scientific. I figure everything out in theory and then scramble like a madman when I'm wrong. Look, you got to get things wrong, but the idea is you get it wrong on something that doesn't matter as much, if you know what I mean. It's you don't want to start cutting into premium leather until you're confident with it. You know, I've even got it wrong before, when everything was working out after prototyping, you know, because as I'm stitching, as I'm just gluing the exterior onto the gusset, unwittingly, unknowingly, I'm pulling too much. And if it's an unreinforced part for whatever reason, it could just stretch very slightly, a fraction of a millimeter every inch as you're going around. And then it's not matching up at the top. So you have to undo it and then kind of press it in instead of kind of pull and turn at the same time. It can, so you can have it perfectly right, but you're not perfect. So the math can match up, but the way you glue it in, the way you stitch it and things like that, you're a variable that you just can't get perfectly consistent every time because you're imperfect and so is the leather. So the math may check out, it may work out on Illustrator or some computer-aided design program. And then when you confidently cut all your pieces out and attempt to put it all together, you're just left staring at a pile of stuff that doesn't work. You know, that's why in the course that I say, look, if you're new to leather, and even if you're not, I know some people don't like using somebody else's design, even though I give people permission, use my designs, sell your work, make a lot of money off it. It's fine. It's what I'm doing this for. But sometimes it's best to do things by the book, because when you do it exactly how I'm teaching and then it works, you're getting lots of these little tiny aha moments as you're going along. You're thinking, how is that going to work? And then you're putting it all together and you're like, oh yeah, I get it now. And you start doing that enough, you think, okay, if that works, I could probably modify this part and it would still work. And then it does. And then you're kind of using your experience and what you've learned to make your own thing. I know it's very tempting to want to go, I want to create an entirely new design with a wacky gusset and this thing and add that and add that. But sometimes it's best to do, work within the rules before you start breaking them. You have to really understand the rules first of all, before you can, go your own way and start creating your own designs. So I really do encourage people's creativity. Let your interests and your passions shine through your work and your designs. But it is important to understand the reason why things work the way they work, first of all. And that may involve following a pattern to the T, to the millimeter, as much as you can. But again, it's important to make your own mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes and wasted lots of leather over the years. It's kind of one of those things. You got to be willing to make mistakes and sometimes lose leather, because you may have lost, $20, $40, $50, $100 worth of leather in one fell swoop in a mistake. I mean, you can always use it for something else, but that's an invaluable lesson that further down the line you might make something out of exotic leather, and because you've learned that lesson, you don't make that mistake, and then it works out, that it hasn't cost you too much. And that's kind of the way I try and look at mistakes as much as possible. It's an opportunity to learn something, as frustrating sometimes as they can be. And indeed, a lot of the time, it's not the cost of the leather when you make a mistake, but the time. But you have to understand that you will learn something from it. There will be a lesson in there somewhere if you look deep enough. I have to say, I want to bongo the gussets. I bet it makes great acoustics. Maybe lift this up first of all. Yeah. Honestly, my first prototype is usually better than my second because I get lazy. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think sometimes that can be because you're excited. I know what you mean by that. Sometimes you come out with this great idea, you make it out of cheap leather, bonded leather, craft foam, whatever, and it's really cool. And then you make another prototype, and it's like, I don't want to make another prototype. I want to jump straight into it now. It's yeah, it can be a chore. The first one is fun, and the next one could be like, yeah. So you might, I don't know if it's you being lazy. It's probably you being a little bit disinterested because you're rearing to get going now. Guys, I'm just going to get to the end of the seam. I'll take my time with it, but if you do have any questions or anything you want to fire off beforehand, feel free. While we have the chance, just a short one today while I finish off. Good afternoon from Portugal. It's still the afternoon in Portugal, eh? It's almost 7 o'clock in the evening here. Thank you, Bob. Tiago said hi. Complacent might be the word. Yeah, maybe. You know yourself better than I do. I have to say, this is quite a pleasurable stitching experience, this one. Because as I'm stitching, I've got multiple layers that I'm going through. I've got the binding, the tweed, the interior leather, the welt, and the other side of the binding. So that's 5 layers that we're going through here. We're about to go through 7 layers actually with the leather reinforcing the zip. But because there's so many layers, they can compress. As I'm kind of stitching it in, it's really pulling it all in together, which is, I don't know why I find that quite pleasing. So alongside the zip, I've left 2 strips full thickness. And I've designed this one. Normally what will happen is you'll get leather reinforcement on a zip. And the first thing you do, especially in machine stitching, is you stitch the leather reinforcement either side of the zip onto the zip. And then what you do is you take the zip and you stitch it onto the bag. So you require 2 seams. But because this is hand stitching, 2 seams that's almost half a meter long is gonna, well, it would be 4 seams. So there's 2 seams here. If you stitched it twice, it'd be 4 seams. So it'd be 2 meters of stitching, hand stitching through multiple layers of leather. It's not fun. So what I've done here is created a design where we can, have something covering the interface between the bag and the zip tape, but it also reduces the amount of stitching we have to do without reducing the amount of strength that it provides. But leaving this full thickness, so it's the same thickness as the gusset, just adds a little bit more stiffness to the top of the bag. Whereas before, when I didn't have it, the weight of itself would sag in a little bit. This has a little bit more rigidity to it. I'm pressing either end, it's going to bend in the middle. But when it's being lifted, it doesn't do that. So it's just, you don't, and then this comes into design. In fact, I didn't want this fabric and the leather on the side to be too stiff, because I know I've got the stiffness of the gusset with the welts, which is very rigid, okay, once it's all glued and stitched in place, because you've got multiple layers. You've got a bag base, you've got these full thickness straps on the inside stitched to an interior piece of leather, and then you've got this on top. All of these things are adding structure. It's almost like wall ties on a building. It's like they're a little bit weak when they're untied, and when you add a steel tie between them, every time you do that, it becomes more and more rigid and more strong. And it's the same with this. As you're building up a bag, you're adding all these pieces on the outside that add structural integrity. So that's one of the reasons we have that strip of leather on the top. And I've left it the full, I believe it's 2 millimeters from memory, instead of thinning it down, splitting it down, should I say. Oof. Strangely enough, that wasn't a needle going in my finger. I keep getting these shocks and zaps. So some of you might know, I went through surgery a while back. With a kitchen knife, cut my hand open. You can kind of see the scar going down there. Severed the artery, the nerve, and cut into the tendon. And it's been a year and a half, and I still get occasional zaps, which is a good indication that the nerve is coming back online, because it's completely numb up here, but I'm starting to get feeling very slowly. And some days it will itch, and then just touching something, I'm like, ow, and I didn't actually do anything. Yeah, weird. Very strange. Yeah, that felt really odd. Felt like something was going inside my finger, but it was just the nerve. So it's a good sign. Freaks me out when it does that. Right, moving on. Multiple layers now. And through that reinforcement. And there's a central stitch here. You can see this is actually getting covered over on this end. So that will have a protective cover. And that way it's all one piece all the way around. A lot of the time you'll see at the bottom, the two ends come together and either there's a piece that covers it or they overlap and then you stitch it in. I've left this completely unadulterated and it's the top where it meets which will get covered over. And I think having something there ties in nicely with a natural pattern interrupt within the design. So it leaves this cleaner, plus any bulk here, which is near the bottom end. It can sometimes, when it's rigid like this, wear out because it sticks out a little bit more. So that's something that I factored into the design. Same, love it. What's, oh. Bob says the bag is beautiful. Thank you. I wonder if I can find that tweed in the US. I mean, you can always order it from the UK and have it delivered in the US. I mean, it's not an unknown brand. I mean, there's lots of companies around the world that make suits and clothing from Harris tweed. So it does get sent internationally. So I think companies that supply clothing, retailers and things like that will likely have some. It doesn't have to be Harris tweed. I just love the kind of the history and the heritage and the fact that every part of this, every thread is hand woven, which is really cool. But there's more than one company. There's English companies that do it, Irish companies do it, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a US company that made something similar to this, because there's a lot of Scottish heritage in the US. I would not be surprised if there was something similar available. That all sure helps as well. Got myself one from your old video review. Oh yeah. I mean, you still can't best it. The one that you have, is it the same as this? Let me just focus that. Is it the same as this, or is it the one that has not the perforations, the serrations, the knurling, the kind of checkered pattern, and then I think the end they machine it where there's lots of little circles in there for decoration, that kind of thing. I can understand this having that checkered. It hasn't been a problem. I haven't dropped my awl because it's slick, but that seems to be something that came out shortly after this was released. I think this may have been the Mark 1. I'm not sure. Interesting to see how much they cost now. I don't actually know. I remember this was a $100 oil. I was very lucky actually. I got sent loads of stuff from Rocky Mountain Leather. I remember I did the Summit, Rocky Mountain Summit creasing machine. Apparently they don't sell that anymore, but I did that. They sent me that. They sent me this. So I got this for free. I mean, I'm very lucky. But as you can see, they've made a lot of money out of my reviews, which is I guess the whole idea. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But yeah, if something happened to this, 100% buy another one. No problem. It seems expensive, but it is one of those things that's a lot of money, but it's worth the price. I mean, you can still stitch just fine. It's just the selling point for this isn't the inclusion of titanium or anything. It's the geometry of the awl blade on that. It's just very good. It's very good steel. And yeah, just the way it's shaped and the angles and the chisel tip and that kind of thing, it just works really, really well. Imagine if you did a French seam. I mean, you could potentially, like when you say French seam, do you mean like French binding? Have you tried wet molding the sides of the bag? So that actually is on the outside wet molded. Obviously this is flat, but it's this gusset bends down towards the edge, and then there's a welt that it's stitched onto, and then the exterior of the bag gets glued around the welt, and then it's bound, and then it's stitched in. It makes a very rigid piece, although it doesn't look like it's bent. You can kind of see maybe in the light there that it kind of bends in a little bit. Mine has knurling, yeah. Didn't realize there was a difference. Yeah, the Mark 1 is just smooth, as you can see. And on the inside, there's actually a steel rod that goes down the center. So although there's weight savings either end, it's like it's weighted in the middle with a steel threaded rod that goes from here down to there to connect the two. Surprised you can still stitch through as many layers with that injury without some sort of finger grip. No, I can feel like down here is when it gets to the side and the top that it goes numb. So I can still feel the pressure here. If I move my finger over to here, that's where it starts to go into kind of no man's land. 89 euros from Deco Cuir. So that would be about $100, wouldn't it? Very similar. I think they're about 80 when they first came out, and that was it. I think that was from Mando in Paris, and Deco is just down the road in Paris, isn't it? I think is it Deco Cuir in Paris? It was in France anyway. There's also a cheaper aluminium version. Aluminium, spelt the British way. Look at that. Yeah, I haven't seen that. I'll have to check that out. Where is it on Deco Cuir? I'm assuming that it would be because that's where you bought it. I'll have to check that out. And it's just exactly the same, just made from aluminium. That's interesting. I don't know if I'd go for that. I need an awl to be light. I mean, it could be made of lead. It's just not that big enough to have an issue with the mass. Tiago says, yeah, French binding. Yeah, you could, if you made the exterior from leather, and then you added a skived allowance. So you made it a little bit longer than you needed to, and then kind of drew a line on the inside of the exterior bag, matched it up to the edge of the welt so that you had an excess sticking out. You could then fold that over and then stitch it in. Yeah, that could potentially work. I mean, it would be a bit more, in theory, if you wanted to repair this, you could just unstitch the whole thing quite simply and then take the binding off, put a new binding on, and then stitch it back up. If you did a French seam, which would be, the binding would be the main bag, there would be very little you could do. I guess you could then just bind it over the top of the French seam. So there is that. But yeah, no, it would be, I think it would be an interesting proposition, though I do like the fact that this has a little bit of a frame to the edge of the bag, if you know what I mean, here. Whereas if it was French binding, that would just be blind. It would just turn in at the end. I mean, that would make a very simpler, maybe a little sleeker looking bag, but I think it ties in nicely with the straps that I've added. But if you didn't add straps and you just had the, the D-ring handle attachment stitched on there in like a shap, as it's called, that would make it a little bit more, I guess, minimalist in some ways. Yeah, it's on Deco Cuir. Yeah, different woods. I went for titanium because I'm posh, proper posh. Yeah, I mean, I like this. The wood on this, I'm not sure what it is. It's too light to be ebony, but it might be, because there's different types of, I mean, there's blonde ebony, isn't there? But apparently the wood from this, no, it wouldn't be ebony. Ebony is from Africa. Apparently the wood from this comes from the Jura Mountains, which incidentally is one of my favorite places in the whole world. It's just kind of a skiing region in France. The Jura kind of goes over to Switzerland as well. I've driven through it a few times, kind of doing like a driving European holiday, which I like to do every few years. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. For some reason, as soon as I drive into the Jura, I instantly feel really happy. I don't know, just thinking about it makes me happy. And then when I found out that that's where the wood comes from, I was like, oh, I love this all. Plus, it was my favorite price. Right, guys, I'm just kind of at the end here. I have to go and teach the finishing of this seam on camera for the course. But stay tuned because I'm doing more on this bag all the time. So keep your eye out for, lives if you want to ask questions and kind of see what I'm up to and get some tips and tricks and things like that. I am either tonight or tomorrow uploading an almost 2-hour live. I edited it much shorter though, it's like an hour and 20, with some really interesting tidbits and tricks. It was kind of like a Q&A, and I filmed it on my main camera whilst I did an Instagram live at the same time. So try not to be completely not confused. But I'm going to upload that either tonight or tomorrow, and that's a really good one because there's lots of really interesting questions being asked about bag making and gusset design and kind of stuff that I've touched upon today, but in a bit more depth as well. Cocobolo, I don't know. I mean, it's from France, right? Cocobolo is what, South American, if I remember correctly. I don't know if they would have that. So whatever it is, it's a European species of some kind. But it has a really cool, like, almost tiger stripe. This side, it's I wouldn't say it's plain, but it just looks like dark wood. But this side here has a real depth to it. It's almost like it's 3D. It's really cool. It doesn't appear to be any stain on it. It's just been polished and some kind of maybe a linseed oil or something. I don't think there's a varnish on it, but it's very nicely finished. The geometry on this, the way it tapers in, is a little bit different to some of the other awls, but yeah, I like that one. Seems like mahogany. I don't know if that's legal in Europe anymore. I think that's mostly been replaced with sapele. And I don't know if mahogany grows. I thought that was like African, Indian, South American kind of thing. Exotic hardwood. Don't know if that would be. I know you can't get mahogany here anymore. It's on the I believe it's on the CITES register now. So being as it's an endangered species. I remember when I was 16, 17, I was doing a carpentry apprenticeship in London, and I remember many occasions that we used to work with mahogany for like really fine finishing in houses and things like that. I remember working with it. It was nasty stuff, to be honest. It didn't smell great as well when you were working with it, but once you like put a finish on it, an oiled finish or varnish, it would really pop in that beautiful deep rich red color. It was lovely to finish, pain to work with. I remember it it chipped really badly if your saw blade wasn't sharp enough. I had no idea about that. Seems like, yeah. Well, double check. You might go online and find I'm talking rubbish, but but yeah, I think it's like a decade or more ago it got replaced with sapele because it's not sapele isn't endangered. I think most of it's from Brazil. I think it's a bit harder than mahogany as well, but it has a kind of a similar look to it. In fact, do I have some? Let me just double check. I have a piece of sapele somewhere. Yeah, I do. It's right here. And it's raw as well. It doesn't have... I got this because I work next to a massive joinery. That's sapele, which is very, very similar to mahogany. It doesn't look very red on camera, but it has a really red tinge. If I put it up next to something that has no red and is just all brown, no, even then. But yeah, it has a really rich. You could very easily be fooled that this was mahogany. It looks very similar, but that is sapele, and that's what they replaced mahogany with. I digress. We're not even talking about Leathercraft anymore. The wood identification. That's really red, though, isn't it? It's a deep. Yeah, it has more red in it. The camera's not picking it up. Anyway, guys, Thanks a lot for joining me. It's been a really cool live talking to you guys, and luckily the comments didn't cut out on this one. The last two lives on YouTube, the comments just stopped all of a sudden, and then someone messaged me later going, "Oh, you weren't. There were like loads of questions being asked, and you weren't replying." And I was like, "Oh no, what a pain in the ass." Yeah, so I know there were some woods that are banned from chopping, so there was a hunt for vintage furniture. Yeah. Can imagine there would be. Yeah, so comments worked great today. So thanks for joining in and having a chat, and it's been really fun. And for those of you new to Leathercraft, you want to learn how to stitch, don't forget leathercraftmasterclass.com. Get your free video on how to hand stitch, and I will see you in the next live. Don't forget to turn on those notifications. I'll see you next time. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot.